There's a moment, usually around 2 a.m., when the rest of the world seems to be sleeping peacefully, and you're lying there with your eyes closed but your mind wide awake. It's running through tomorrow's meeting for the 7th time, rewinding yesterday's conversation to find the exact moment you might have said the wrong thing, calculating every possible outcome of a decision you haven't even made yet. Your body begs for rest, but your mind is like a browser with 47 tabs open, and someone keeps opening new ones. You know that feeling, don't you? When exhaustion lives in your bones, but your thoughts refuse to power down. This is what it feels like to be caught in the undertow of overthinking. It's not the same as being thoughtful or analytical. Those are gifts, tools that serve us. No, this is something different. It's when your mind becomes a courtroom where you're simultaneously the prosecutor, the defendant, and the jury, running an endless trial about everything you've done, everything you might do, everything you might do, everything that could possibly go wrong. The clinical term might be repetitive negative thinking, but in the raw language of lived experience, it's simpler. It's your mind trying to protect you by controlling the uncontrollable, and in doing so, stealing the very peace it seeks to preserve. You feel it settling into your body like unwelcome houseguests. Your shoulders carry the weight of tomorrow's problems before they've even arrived. Your jaw clenches against words you haven't said yet, arguments you're having with people who aren't even in the room. There's that familiar knot in your stomach that speaks a language older than words. It's the ancient dialect of worry, whispering that danger lurks around every corner, even when you're safe in your own bed. Your breath becomes shallow, as if deep breathing might somehow let your guard down, might make you vulnerable to all the catastrophes your mind is so desperately trying to prevent. And the cruelest part, from the outside, you're the one who has it all together. You're the planner, the anticipator, the one who thinks 3 steps ahead. People admire your thoroughness, your attention to detail, your ability to see problems before they materialize. They don't see the price you pay for this supposed superpower. They don't see how you rehearse conversations before you have them, how you replay them afterward looking for mistakes, how you lie awake calculating the exact probability of 17 different disasters, none of which have happened yet. Listen, I want to offer you something today. Not another platitude about just relaxing or thinking positive thoughts. Those suggestions, however well-meaning, can feel like someone telling you to just stop bleeding when you're hemorrhaging inside. Instead, I want to name what's really happening. Your mind learned, somewhere along the way, that vigilance equals safety. That if you could just think through every scenario, analyze every angle, prepare for every possibility, then maybe, just maybe, you could protect yourself from pain. It makes sense, doesn't it? Maybe as a child, you learned to read the emotional weather of your household, becoming an expert meteorologist of moods to avoid the storms. Maybe disappointment taught you that hoping was dangerous, so you started preparing for the worst as a form of emotional insurance. Maybe someone's anger or absence taught you that one wrong move could cost you love, so you began rehearsing every interaction, editing yourself before you even spoke. Think of it like this. Imagine your mind as a security system you installed after a break-in. At first, it was exactly what you needed. It kept you safe, helped you navigate treacherous terrain, protected you from being caught off guard again. But over time, that security system became so sensitive that it alerts you to every whisper of wind, every settling of the house, every shadow that passes by the window. Now you're living in a constant state of alarm, exhausted from responding to threats that aren't really there, too tired to enjoy the safety you've worked so hard to create. This internal surveillance system didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built brick by brick from experiences that taught you certain rules. If I make a mistake, I'll pay dearly. If I'm not prepared, something terrible will happen. If I let my guard down, I'll lose everything. These weren't conscious decisions, they were survival strategies your younger self developed with the limited tools available. And they worked. They got you through. But now, what once protected you has become your prison. You see it in the small moments that add up to a life half-lived. You finish a presentation at work, and instead of feeling accomplished, you immediately begin dissecting every word, every pause, every facial expression in the audience. You're with someone you love, physically present but mentally absent. Your thoughts 3 conversations ahead, or 2 days behind. Anywhere but here, anywhere but now. When friends tell you about their problems, you're already solving them before they finish speaking. Your mind racing to fix, to predict, to control. And when someone says those 2 words that make your skin crawl, just relax, you feel a flash of rage, because if it were that simple, don't they think you would have done it by now? The truth is, your mind has confused worry with care, preparation with protection, analysis with action. It believes that if it can just think hard enough, long enough, thoroughly enough, it can think its way to safety. But here's what your beautiful, overworked mind hasn't realized yet. Some uncertainty is not only unavoidable, it's the price of being alive. And the exhaustive effort to eliminate all uncertainty doesn't make you safer. It just makes you too tired to enjoy whatever safety you do have. This isn't about becoming careless or thoughtless. Your depth, your ability to see connections and possibilities, your careful consideration, these are not flaws to be fixed. They're gifts that need boundaries, rivers that need banks to keep them from flooding everything in their path. The invitation here isn't to stop thinking deeply. It's to learn when thinking has stopped serving you and started drowning you. Now let me take you inside a house in Bethany, where the walls are practically vibrating with expectation. Can you see it? The afternoon light slanting through the windows, dust motes dancing in the air, the scent of bread and wine, and too many bodies in too small a space. This is Martha's house. And if houses could hold their breath, hers would be turning blue. Martha wakes that morning with her mind already 3 hours ahead of her body. Before her feet touch the floor, the list is scrolling. Water jars to fill, bread to bake, cushions to arrange, wine to pour, vegetables to prepare, the good plates to clean again because they've been sitting too long. Each task branches into 3 more tasks. Like a tree growing wild inside her skull. She's not doing this because she's shallow or obsessed with appearances. No, Martha is the one who learned early that love looks like anticipation, that care means never letting anyone need anything you could have provided. Picture her moving through that house like a whirlwind with purpose, her hands never still, her eyes scanning for what's missing, what's next, what could go wrong. Every unfilled cup is a personal failure. Every moment of silence is a gap she must fill. Every guest's comfort becomes her responsibility, as if their experience of the divine somehow depends on the temperature of the wine she serves. She's become the atmosphere of the room, invisible but essential, everywhere and nowhere at once. And then there's Mary, sitting at the teacher's feet like she has nowhere else to be. Nothing else that matters. Martha sees her sister there, absorbed in listening, completely present, and something ancient rises in her chest. It's not just annoyance, it's the familiar ache of injustice that every overthinker knows. Why is it always me who sees what needs to be done? Why am I the only one who can't afford to stop? Can you feel it with her? That hot flush of resentment mixed with fear. Because underneath her frustration is a terror she can't name. If she stops moving, stops serving, stops proving her worth through her usefulness, then who is she? What if she sits down and the world actually does fall apart? What if her worst fear is confirmed that she's only loved for what she does, not for who she is? So she breaks. She interrupts the teaching, her exhaustion finally finding words. Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Listen to that question carefully. It's not really about Mary. It's about Martha's deepest fear, that even God doesn't see her drowning in her own devotion, that even the divine is indifferent to her exhaustion. But here's where everything shifts. The response she receives isn't condemnation or dismissal. It's her name, spoken twice. Martha, Martha. When was the last time someone saw through your productivity to your exhaustion and called you by name? Not your role, not your function, but you. In that repetition is recognition. I see you. I see your weariness. I see how hard you're trying to hold everything together. You are anxious and troubled about many things. Not you're wrong, not you're too much, but rather, I see how the weight of many things is crushing you. The invitation that follows isn't to become Mary, to abandon who she is. It's to realize that in this moment, all those many things she's juggling aren't as essential as the one thing right in front of her presence. Connection, being rather than doing. This isn't a story about choosing contemplation over action. It's about recognizing when we've become so lost in the forest of tasks that we can't see the clearing of peace right in front of us. Martha's not being asked to never serve again. She's being invited to understand that her worth isn't measured in completed tasks, that sometimes the most radical act is to stop performing our importance and simply exist. Just as Martha's house, filled with many things, let me show you how your mind builds its own overwhelming household. Every experience you've ever had becomes a brick in the architecture of your beliefs. Think about it. When you were small, you weren't born knowing that mistakes were dangerous, or that needing help was weakness. These weren't truths written in your bones. They were lessons written by life, often in invisible ink that only shows up years later. Here's how the construction happens. Something occurs. Maybe a parent's face darkened when you spilled your juice. Maybe love felt conditional on your performance. Maybe chaos taught you that the only safe space was inside your own vigilance. Your brilliant child mind, doing its best with limited tools, translated these moments into survival rules. If I can predict what's coming, I won't be caught off guard. If I never need anything, I can't be disappointed. If I control everything, nothing can hurt me. These beliefs don't announce themselves as beliefs. They disguise themselves as truth, as just how things are. They become the invisible script you follow. Double-check every email because one typo could unravel everything. Rehearse conversations because the wrong word might cost you love. Scan every face for signs of disapproval because safety depends on everyone being okay with you. In the short term, these strategies work like a charm. They offer the illusion of control, the brief hit of relief that comes from feeling prepared. But long term, they're exhausting your system, like running your car engine all night just in case you need to make a quick escape. The research tells us something profound yet simple. When caregivers are consistent and attuned, a child's nervous system learns to rest, like a cat stretching in a patch of sunlight, trusting the world to hold it. But when care is unpredictable, love appearing and disappearing like a magic trick, safety dependent on reading invisible rules, the nervous system never fully powers down. It stays in what we might call Martha mode, always scanning, always preparing, always one step ahead of disaster. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk talks about how the body keeps the score, and nowhere is this more true than in the overthinker's frame. Your shoulders are literally carrying tomorrow's problems. Your jaw is clenched against words you haven't said yet. Your breathing is shallow because deep breaths feel like letting your guard down. The body knows what the mind tries to ignore. You're living in a state of constant emergency when there's no actual fire. But here's the hidden truth about overthinking that nobody talks about. It's often not about thinking at all. It's about not feeling. When grief knocks at the door, the mind scrambles upstairs to the attic of analysis. When anger rises, the mind quickly builds elaborate scenarios to explain it away. When sadness wells up, the mind creates 100 tasks to avoid sitting still with it. We become mental marathoners, not because we love running, but because we're terrified of what happens when we stop. Think about Martha again. All that movement, all that serving, all that doing. What if it wasn't just about hospitality? What if it was about avoiding the vulnerability of simply being? Because when you're Martha, constantly in motion, you never have to feel the weight of your own longing, never have to ask for what you need, never have to risk being seen without your armor of usefulness. This isn't drama or weakness, it's adaptation. Your vigilance is not a character flaw, it's a testimony to your resilience, proof that you found a way to survive. The invitation now isn't to demolish everything you've built, but to install some dimmer switches where you once only had floodlights. Here's where we meet the cruelest irony of all, the twist in the story that makes you want to laugh and cry at the same time. The very thing that saved you is now the thing that's drowning you. Those hypervigilant instincts, that ability to anticipate needs before they're spoken, that profound depth of consideration, these weren't just random traits you picked up. They were life rafts in rough seas. They got you through the storms. They kept you afloat when others might have gone under. Think about it. That child who learned to read the emotional weather before the storm hit. That wasn't neurosis, that was genius. That teenager who figured out how to be indispensable so they'd never be abandoned. That wasn't pathology, that was brilliant adaptation. You developed a superpower. The ability to see around corners, to prevent problems before they materialized, to be so essential that you became impossible to leave. Your overthinking wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the system that kept you safe. But here's what happens to life rafts when you never reach shore. They become prisons floating on open water. The same heightened awareness that once protected you from real danger now manufactures danger where none exists. It's like Martha in that house, so busy preventing imaginary disasters in the kitchen that she's missing the actual miracle in the living room. Your mind, still operating on old emergency protocols, hasn't gotten the memo that the war is over, that you can come home now. The paradox cuts deep. Your mind whispers, if I stop worrying, something terrible will happen. But look closer at your life. Has all that worrying actually prevented pain? Or has it just relocated it? Instead of the sharp, clean pain of disappointment or loss, which passes like whether you've chosen the chronic, exhausting pain of perpetual vigilance, you've traded the possibility of storms for the certainty of never seeing the sun. Your body tells the truth your mind won't admit. Those tension headaches, that insomnia, that constant fatigue, these are not signs that you're not worrying enough. They're evidence that worry itself has become the wound. Let me offer you something to carry, not as a mantra to repeat mindlessly, but as a truth to hold when the anxiety rises. Your depth is not the problem, it's the lack of edges that's drowning you. A river without banks isn't a river anymore, it's a flood. Your profound ability to care, to consider, to connect dots, these are gifts the world needs. But gifts without boundaries become burdens. Responsibility without rest becomes resentment. Care without containment becomes chaos. What would it mean to be like Mary for just one moment? Not to abandon your Martha nature, but to recognize when serving has become hiding, when doing has become avoiding being. What if the bravest thing you could do today isn't to solve another problem or prevent another disaster, but to sit still long enough to feel what you've been running from? Start small, microscopic even. Choose one moment today, just one, to tell your spinning mind, not now, we'll talk later. Maybe it's when you're tempted to check your email for the 14th time. Maybe it's when you're about to rehearse tomorrow's conversation for the 3rd time tonight. Maybe it's when you feel the familiar tug to fix something that isn't yours to fix. Just once, try saying, "Not now," and notice what happens. The ceiling doesn't collapse. The world doesn't end. The people you love don't suddenly stop loving you. Instead, something else might happen. You might feel your lungs remember how to fully expand. You might notice the weight you've been carrying isn't actually yours to carry. You might discover that beneath all that thinking is something beautifully, terrifyingly simple. The present moment, waiting patiently for you to arrive. Let me paint you a picture of how this lives in your everyday moments. The 1,000 tiny ways overthinking has colonized your life. You type a text message, something simple, maybe just confirming dinner plans, and before hitting send, you read it 3 times. No, 4. Change that period to an exclamation mark so you don't sound angry. Add an emoji so they know you're not upset. Delete the emoji because now you seem too eager. This 3-second message has now taken 3 minutes of your life, 3 minutes of mental gymnastics over words that the receiver will glance at for half a second. After social gatherings, you don't just go home, you take the entire evening with you, replaying it like game footage, searching for the moment you said too much, laughed too loud, stayed too long, that joke that got a delayed reaction. You're now convinced everyone was just being polite. That story you told, you're certain you came across as self-absorbed. The compliments someone gave you, they were probably just being nice. Your mind becomes a courtroom where you're always guilty until proven innocent. And somehow, you never quite prove your innocence. Simple decisions transform into Olympic events. Choosing a restaurant becomes a complex algorithm of everyone else's potential preferences. Possible dietary restrictions, parking availability, price points, and 17 other variables. Picking an outfit involves predicting every possible social scenario and weather change. Even choosing which lane to drive in becomes a strategic calculation. It's exhausting being your own air traffic controller for flights that are just trying to land safely. And then there are the questions you ask, over and over, like a broken record of insecurity. Are you sure you're not mad? Is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? Each repetition doesn't bring relief, it just feeds the beast of doubt. You've become a detective in your own life, constantly looking for evidence of problems that don't exist, creating the very tension you're trying to avoid. Your body, that faithful chronicler of truth, tells the story your mind won't acknowledge. Those shoulders that feel like concrete by noon, they're carrying tomorrow's problems and yesterday's regrets simultaneously. That jaw that aches when you wake up, it's been clenched all night, fighting battles in your dreams. The headaches that visit after particularly mental days aren't random. They're your brain's way of saying it's been running too hot for too long. Your breath stays shallow, up in your chest, as if taking a deep breath might let your guard down, might make you vulnerable to all the catastrophes your mind is so busy preventing. From the outside, people might say you're overthinking things or making mountains out of molehills. But from the inside, where you live every moment, it feels like survival. If you let go, if you stop monitoring, stop preparing, stop analyzing, what then? The fear isn't irrational to you. It's as real as gravity. Sometimes you want to scream, I would give anything for an off switch. And then comes the shame spiral. I know I'm being ridiculous. The frustration, why can't anyone understand? The loneliness, nobody sees how hard I'm fighting just to seem normal. I see you. I see the battle you're fighting in silence. This isn't drama or weakness or attention seeking. This is a learned response to a world that once felt too unpredictable to navigate without armor. You're not broken. You're heavily defended. You're not too much. You're trying to be enough for everyone. Let me ask you 3 questions, not to judge, but to illuminate. Where in your life have you said, "I'm fine," while your body screamed otherwise? Which relationship have you convinced yourself is peaceful when really you've just gone silent to avoid conflict? What request for help have you swallowed because needing something felt too vulnerable? If any of these questions land like stones in your stomach, that's not failure, that's recognition. That discomfort isn't something to run from. It's information trying to reach you. Every place where your words and your body disagree, every relationship where you've mistaken silence for peace, every swallowed need, these aren't character flaws. They're map coordinates, showing you exactly where you might start building those edges we talked about. Now that we've named the beast, let's talk about taming it. Not slaying it, because that vigilant part of you has kept you alive, and we honor that. But taming it, teaching it when to sound the alarm and when to rest. These aren't grand gestures or complete personality overhauls. These are small, almost invisible shifts that create pockets of peace in the constant storm. Start with the simplest act of power, naming. When you feel that familiar spiral beginning, the mental tabs multiplying, the scenarios spinning out, pause and whisper to yourself, "Oh, hello, overthinking. I see you're trying to protect me again." This isn't dismissive, it's recognition. Like Martha being called by name, sometimes being seen is the beginning of being freed. Try this phrase like a life raft. This is a process happening to me, not the truth about me. Here's something radical. Schedule your worry. I know it sounds absurd, like scheduling spontaneity, but hear me out. Set aside 20 minutes each day, maybe 7 p.m., maybe during your commute, as your designated worry window. When anxious thoughts crash the party at 2 p.m., you tell them, "I hear you, and we'll talk at 7. At first, they'll throw tantrums like toddlers denied candy, but slowly, miraculously, your mind learns it doesn't need to be on duty 24/7. There are visiting hours for worry now. When your mind gets lost in the forest of what-ifs, bring it back to the clearing of what now. Ask yourself, what's actually in my hands in the next 24 hours? Not your whole life, not next year, just the next day. Maybe it's sending one email you've been dreading. Maybe it's taking a 15-minute walk. Maybe it's texting a friend one honest sentence. These aren't solutions to existential problems. They're proof that you can take action even while uncertainty exists. Then there's the practice of microdosing uncertainty. Choose one small thing each day to do imperfectly on purpose. Send the text without reading it 3 times. Submit the report at 80% perfect instead of 95. Don't ask, "Are you mad at me?" when someone's quiet. Let the silence be. You're teaching your nervous system what Martha learned that day in Bethany. The world doesn't end when you stop controlling everything. Your body has been trying to get your attention, tapping on your shoulder while you've been lost in your head. Come back to it. Feel your feet on the ground, literally, right now. Feel them. Take 3 breaths where your exhale is longer than your inhale. This tells your nervous system the tiger isn't chasing you anymore. Drink water like it's a meditation. Stretch your neck, those poor muscles that have been holding your head up while it carries the weight of imagined worlds. And learn these phrases like you'd learn prayers, because they're boundaries disguised as words. I'd love to help, but I can't today. Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow. That won't work for me. But thank you for asking. These aren't rejections, they're life rafts. They're you choosing Mary's portion for just a moment. The radical act of knowing what's essential right now. On the hard days, when the spiral tightens despite your best efforts, return to the basics. Water, breath, ground. Name 5 things you can see, for you can touch. 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. This isn't a cute mindfulness trick. It's a neurological reset button, pulling you from tomorrow's imagined disasters back to today's real moment. The path back to presence isn't a highway, it's a deer trail, made by taking the same small steps over and over until they become a way through. You don't need to abandon your depth or your carefulness. You just need to remember that sometimes, like Mary at Jesus' feet, the most responsible thing you can do is stop being responsible for everything. Let's return to that crowded house in Bethany one more time, but now with new eyes. Do you see it differently now? Martha isn't just a cautionary tale about busyness. She's you at your kitchen sink at midnight, washing dishes that could wait until morning but won't because your mind has convinced you that rest is earned, not given. She's you checking your email one more time before bed, as if the world might end if you're unreachable for 8 hours. She's every moment you've chosen productivity over presence because being useful felt safer than just being. When you tell your worrying mind, "I'll listen to you at 7 p.m., you're doing exactly what Mary did that day. You're choosing one thing over many things. You're saying that right now, in this moment, the most important thing isn't solving tomorrow's problems or preventing next week's disasters. It's being here, fully here, even if here is messy and uncertain and doesn't have all its edges tucked in neat." Think about what sitting at the feet means in your actual life. It's not about becoming someone who meditates for hours or suddenly developing a Zen personality you've never had. Maybe it's turning off notifications during dinner, actually tasting your food instead of using mealtime as a strategy session for tomorrow. Maybe it's taking those 2 minutes in your car after you park, before you walk into your house, to just breathe and transition from out there to in here. Maybe it's lying in bed and counting your breaths instead of your failures. Martha's transformation wasn't about becoming Mary. Sisters don't become each other, they learn from each other. Martha's invitation was to recognize when her strength had become her weakness, when her gift of service had become a wall between her and the very thing she was serving. Your invitation is the same. To notice when your beautiful, protective, analytical mind has stopped being a tool and started being a tyrant. The miracle isn't that Martha suddenly stopped caring about the meal or the guests or the dozen details that genuinely needed attention. The miracle is that she was seen, truly seen, in her exhaustion and invited to choose differently, just for that moment. Not forever, not as a complete personality change, but just for now. "Martha, Martha," he said. And in that repetition was recognition, compassion, and permission all at once. You carry that same permission. When your mind starts listing the many things, the emails to answer, the conversations to prepare for, the disasters to prevent, you can hear your own name spoken with the same tenderness. You can recognize that the house won't burn down if you stop tending every flame. You can trust that the bread will still rise, even if you're not watching it every second. Here's what I want you to know. Choosing the one thing isn't about doing less, it's about being more. More present, more whole, more you. When Martha finally understood that her worth wasn't measured in completed tasks, she didn't stop serving, she started serving from a place of choice, rather than compulsion. When you learn to tell your overthinking mind, "Not now, we'll talk later," you're not abandoning your depth or your carefulness. You're just remembering that sometimes the most productive thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. The invitation stands before you like an open door, to step out of the courtroom in your head and into the kitchen of your actual life, to make bread instead of imagining storms, to wash dishes as meditation rather than medication, to choose one small, possible thing today, not because it will fix everything, but because it will remind you that you have the power to choose. And in that choice, in that tiny rebellion against the tyranny of many things, You might just find the peace that all your overthinking has been trying to manufacture but never could. So here we are, you and I, at the place where paths diverge. Let me tell you again what I told you at the beginning, because sometimes the most important truths need to be heard twice. Like Martha's name in that crowded room, overthinking is not a defect or madness. It's a control mechanism that saved you once, maybe many times, but without edges, it becomes a prison. Your beautiful, vigilant mind that kept you safe is the same mind that's keeping you exhausted. This isn't failure, it's a strategy that's outlived its usefulness, like keeping your winter coat on in July. In the next 24 hours, not next week, not when you feel ready, but in the next single rotation of this earth. I want you to choose one small act of rebellion against the tyranny of overthinking. Send that text without reading it 4 times. Set your worry appointment for 7 p.m. and actually keep it. Eat lunch tasting every bite instead of solving problems between swallows. Walk to your car without planning tomorrow's conversations. Just one thing. One small door left unlocked in the maximum security prison of your mind. And then, notice your breath afterward. Notice how the world doesn't collapse. Notice how love doesn't leave. Notice how you're still here, still worthy, still whole, even with that one small thing left undone, unchecked, uncontrolled. Picture your mind as a house lit up like Christmas in July, every room blazing, every corner illuminated, no shadow permitted to exist. From the street, it might look impressive, this beacon of vigilance, but inside, it's exhausting. The electrical bill alone is killing you. Learning to live with boundaries isn't about moving to a dark cave. It's about installing dimmer switches, about choosing which rooms need light right now and which can rest in gentle darkness. The house remains yours. Your depth, your carefulness, your ability to see what others miss, these remain yours. You're just learning that not every room needs a searchlight 24 hours a day. Martha learned this in one transformative moment, that all her spinning plates and juggling acts couldn't earn what was already hers, the right to exist, to matter, to be seen beyond her usefulness. She didn't stop being Martha. She just learned that Martha was enough, even when she wasn't doing everything for everyone. The invitation wasn't to become Mary, but to recognize that sometimes Mary's choice was also available to her. Here's what our journey together has shown. You learned to survive by overthinking, and that has its own logic, its own intelligence. Your body holds the score of every time vigilance saved you. The security system you built worked until it didn't, helped until it hurt. The paradox cuts both ways. Your greatest strength became your heaviest burden, but that means your burden carries the seed of strength. Every micro exit we've explored, naming the process, scheduling worry, choosing concrete over abstract, practicing uncertainty, returning to your body, these aren't cures. They're choices, small rebellions, tiny revolutions. The peace you're seeking, it was never going to come from thinking your way to perfect safety. It was always going to come from accepting that uncertainty is the price of being alive, and that price is worth paying. Some things will always be outside your control. Some stories won't have clean endings. Some people won't understand. Some risks can't be eliminated. And still, you can live. Not just survive, but live. You are not your overthinking. You are the consciousness that notices the overthinking. You are the awareness that can say, "Oh, there I go again," with compassion instead of judgment. You are bigger than your patterns, deeper than your strategies, more than the sum of your fears. The water of your depth can nourish instead of drown. The choice is yours, one moment at a time.